All right, hello, hello, hello. This is Ross Fertel, faithful reader on the forums, and I'm here with another Worlds interview, this time with Adam Barger. Adam, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Ross. How about you?
Doing okay?
Awesome.
For those of you who are watching, we're going to go through just his second edition decks. So, if you came here looking for commentary on first edition, thank you very much for your click. Have a good day. Bye bye.
I don't think anyone wants any commentary on my first edition performance. It was pretty pretty lackluster.
So, going into things you were a little more successful with.
Yeah.
It looks like you played Voyager both days.
Mhm.
Um, what's your familiarity with Voyager? What made you want to play them
Yeah.
at Worlds?
Yeah. So the way my thought process worked was because of my work schedule, I don't necessarily get a lot of time in the immediate months leading up to Worlds to do a lot of play testing with decks leading up to the event. What I wanted was I wanted to go with a deck that so my goal was to make day two. That was my goal for this year. And I wanted to go with a deck that had a high floor, a decent ceiling that maximized my chances of getting into day two. And knowing that I didn't have a lot of time to play test something new, what I decided to do was I modified a deck that I've played a number of times before, has always been fairly successful for me and ran with that because I knew that Five Space Voyager fit the criteria that I was working under this year.
Yeah, I had my unpaid interns take a look at this deck. Um, Five Space Voyager. And then I also noticed that with this deck specifically, you had Trisha Jenkins in here.
Yeah.
Um, and was she just a nice little substitute for Letos?
A little bit. I thought the counter bonus was nice. It was a good speed boost at the beginning if I hit her. I didn't necessarily on day two expect to need a Leto substitute. Now, I'll talk later about my thinking for day two and how that affected my choices in day two. But I think, is a must-have 3x card in any Voyager deck, and I put her in there. But at a 50 card draw deck, I knew that it wasn't going to be something where I could rely on having that boost. I didn't think I needed it, given how fast that Voyager can work even on its own. So,
Yeah, the other thing I noticed and quite frankly applaud you on is you've got more than one ship.
mhm.
You have three copies of the Voyager, you've got a Delta
Yep,
Flyer.
yep.
If someone decides to shoot at you, you're surprisingly okay with that.
And that happened to me last year. I wasn't playing Voyager, but I had a matchup against winner of Borg, Stefan Slabby, and he did shoot me. I did get destroyed by the Delta Flyer, so I wanted to be prepared. I think it's always worthwhile to be prepared on day one for an interference deck. If you look at my dilemma pile, you'll notice that I have back to basics in the dilemma pile. So between finding our way back to basics, I felt fairly well insulated, or at least somewhat protected from an aggressive or interference oriented strategy. And it ended up working out well for me, Ross, because I think on day one the first three dilemma piles that I saw were kill piles. I threw in one game back to basics early because I actually did lose the flyer to a Dreamer in the Dream. So that sort of conservativeness um, increase the size of my draw deck a little bit, increase the variability of my draw deck a little bit. But on a day one where you're playing 5 games and you don't necessarily know what strategies you'll be up against, I thought that was the right decision.
Yeah, and so I take it in general your games went how you were planning on them going.
I think they went a little better than how I was planning on them going, especially early on. I'll say before we get into each match, one thing that pleasantly surprised me on day one was I actually drew into Voyager in my opening hand the first, I think, 3 games, which made things go incredibly smoothly. And I think in the 5th game, I had a christening. I think there was only one game where I didn't have Voyager or christening in hand and had to use Finding Our Way to discard and dig for it.
Right. Let me see here. So going through the day, you started out against Jared Hoffman and
Yeah.
his Cardassian deck.
Yeah, Jared was playing Cardassian good stuff deck, and that was a very quick game. I think we were done within 25 or 30 minutes. We were both attempting by turn 3. I got Trisha, I think, on turn 2, if memory serves me correctly, which sped things up. That was a full loss. I can't remember if I got 2 missions or only 1 mission, but what that came down to was he was throwing dilemmas at me that hit, and my dilemma choices. I think they were good dilemma choices, but they just happened to not hit. And he did have Garrick out, that was helping him cheat past a little bit, which probably was a deciding factor. Voyager doesn't have much cheating ability. It has some, but nothing to the extent that like a Garrett can do.
Right. Well, and the Cardassians, they've got tricks ready to go.
That's why I call it good stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
they've got all the things,
Yeah.
and all the things were there.
And then moving into a string of wins, your second game was against Greg Dillon, who was
Yeah.
playing Starfleet.
Yeah, Greg was playing Starfleet. It's not a build that I was tremendously familiar with, because I haven't played it myself, but Greg seemed to have trouble with his he seemed to have trouble drawing into the cards that he needed, and he was getting a little frustrated at that. I, on the other hand, the deck was working the way I wanted it to, but he was running a kill pile. What's interesting about Voyager is you don't actually necessarily hate to see kill piles in Voyager if you're prepared for it, because one thing that can happen is you can get bogged down with too many personnel on your ships, right? You don't want necessarily like 9 people on Voyager, 10 people on Voyager, 11 people on Voyager before you can get that couple of turns to cycle Finding Your Way, pull the Delta Flyer, discard it on the order phase to get it out, right? So it helped a little bit. I think I did have to reset with a back to basics. That might have been the game where I actually lost the fly. Can't remember. But I was able to work through and had good pacing through his skills while still solving missions. I think I got to 2 missions. His deck was finally starting to work. He was down to, you know, 15, 20, 25-ish cards left in his draw deck when he was finally starting to get what he needed. He had an accumulated knowledge out, which I can't remember whether he used or not. If he did use it, he didn't use it as quickly as I thought he should, uh, or would. But I got the 2 missions done. Time was called. I think I went to the third mission. You need 4 for Voyager, right? So
Right.
at this point, I guess I'm playing for differential. Um, got stopped at the third mission and ended up with, I think, a 70 to 35, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
Yeah. So that was a mod win.
which is good because he wrote a really good tournament report. And I think in his tournament report, he wrote that he finally had what he needed out in order to go and blow through two missions on his next turn. But I had gone second, which ended up being fortuitous for me.
Right. Let me see here. And then your fourth round was against Justin Ford, who was playing Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, go back to the third round.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I played
Oh,
Mark.
Michael. Yeah, Mark Mustin.
Yep, and he was playing Vintner TNG. That was a fairly easy game for me. It wasn't a quick win, but it was an easy win. He wasn't drawing into Vintner. He wasn't giving me dilemmas that I couldn't pass, and 100 to 30 maybe might have even been 100 to nothing that game. That was really easy of a match for me because my deck was doing everything that it was supposed to.
Nice when that happens every now and then.
Every now and then it happens.
I mean, with 5 rounds, you'd expect it to maybe happen eventually.
Right. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, right? Was I did slightly better that I think than I expected. I ended up with two full wins, a mod win, and two full losses, which is maybe slightly better than expectations. It was just enough to get me into to round two and meet my goal.
Yeah,
That said, I think everyone was thinking that the uh, number of victory points needed to make round two was going to be smaller than it actually ended up being, and differential and strength of schedule ended up playing a really big part. So getting those two earlier wins after the early loss against Jared, I think just bumped my strength of schedule and up enough to sneak through.
yeah. And then you had round four against Justin Ford. He had Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, he was playing Common Deep Space Nine, um, and that game was a difficult game that ended up zapping a lot of energy out of me. This was a game where what I was just talking about became important. Justin got a pretty good start. I think he got his first mission before I did. I was having trouble getting staffing or something. I had to put a couple of dilemmas under Caretaker's Array when I didn't want to. Normally, what I want to do is go to that mission. I forget which one. The one that lets you name a dilemma that gets prevented or overcome from then on. That normally you want to
Yeah,
go there for
mystery inversion,
history and
inversion, mystery.
and but couldn't get there quite yet. But I was able to put a couple under Caretaker's Array as sort of like a biding my time sort of thing. He got his first mission, got bogged down at his second mission, whereas I was able to actually speed up, and I might have had a 70 point turn at the very end of the game. Um, but I was still a little short, right? Time was called. I think he was running a tulip pile, so he kept on getting stops, but not getting like the right stops, which was getting frustrating for him. Time was called. I already had a mod win because I think I was up maybe like 80 to 60 or something like that. I don't know. You needed the four. I needed the four missions though, and I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, I've got a chance to get a full win. Both my Voyager and Delta Flyer had range. I could get to Caretaker's Array. And what I did was I actually said, Justin, I've got to go for the full win, right? I can't just end it. I have to. And he understood. I went back to Caretaker's Array, already had a couple dilemmas under it, was able to arrange my crews in such a way where, um, I mean, God, it's such an easy mission, right? It was very easy to pass. He might have been running TCS, so with six people on each ship, or so, I was able to pass, and ended up getting the full win. But that entailed really sticking with it. It was a lot of mental energy, a lot of uh, um, team planning, a lot of strategy at the end. And any time where you're doing 2 or 3 missions in your last 1 or 2 turns, that's going to take something out of you. And that was a very energy sapping game.
Yeah, going for those 20 points with all that sounds like a lot.
hmm
Yeah, especially late in the game when some of your better dilemmas are already under submissions.
Yeah, I forget what dilemmas I was giving to Justin. But this is my pile is a fairly generic attrition pile, and I consider myself to be a probably above average dilemma thrower. So um it was sort of like the reverse of what had happened in the Jared game, where my dilemmas started like I'd give him a moral choice, right? I knew that, I had 2/3 of a chance of, hitting a fed dude, right? That kind of thing. I think I one stopped him on outclassed once, that kind of stuff. Uh so like I said, it was like the reverse of the Jared game, right? Where his stuff, I think he was stopping people, but not stopping the right people. And I was hitting the people that he needed in order to in order to solve or otherwise pass.
Yeah, and then so if we were to discuss your day as an Oreo cookie, you've got the top cookie with the loss, some nice good chunks of cream with the win,
hmm
and then the bottom is another cookie with a loss to Casey Wickham
Yeah.
playing TOS. How
Yeah.
did that final cookie turn out?
Yeah, so Casey played TOS. I'd seen that deck before. I played one game against him like the first night at Maggie's house in the basement of Doom. I was just playing this kind of goofy deck that I had brought. And he apparently, this is his go-to deck. It's original Thinker Kirk deck, and this is where sort of like the double-edged sword of what I was just saying comes in. I do consider myself a good, like an above average dilemma thrower, but original Thinker just says, guess what? You don't get to throw a dilemma, right?
Yeah,
So I mentally I have a really hard time adjusting my own approach with that, and I knew it was going to be a tough matchup. I thought I had a chance. I played okay. He ended up playing a little bit more conservatively with original Thinker Kirk than I thought he would. Maybe he didn't have a backup in hand, in retrospect. I think I got one mission in that game, but I also was probably by then a little mentally fried after the Justin game. Yeah, that was to piggyback on your metaphor, the uh too crunchy stale goodness at the end of the game
yeah.
or end of the tournament.
Okay. Well, the deck did what you wanted it to. It got you to day two.
Yeah.
What's the future for this deck? Will you play it again? Would you make some changes to it?
You always want to make changes to it. I made changes to it since the last time I played it. I think the major change was I put a couple unexpecteds in there versus the last time I played it, which was maybe a year ago. I might have slightly modified the personnel selection. I don't know. Um, unless design comes up with some really innovative and new stuff. If you're using plasma storm debris in a 5 space Voyager deck, your mission selection is going to be fairly locked in. No, it actually just is going to be locked in, which means your personnel selection are then also essentially locked in. And I think this is a deck that I'll continue to play, especially if kind of fun new things come out. But I also don't think that, especially given the strength of 5 strength Voyager, it's going to be getting a lot of tools. So it would be if um, anything sort of meta needs to happen to increase its viability.
Okay. Anything more about day one before we move on to day two?
I don't think so.
All right. So if I were cynical, I would say you took your day one deck, threw it up in the air, caught about a third, half a third of the cards, and then just made up the difference with some other cards.
So
Because, yeah.
that is not what happened. So I'll tell you what happened is I was sitting at the bar at the Moose Lodge with Chris Stonsby, and he was like, "Your deck's too big." I was like, "Yeah, I get that, but it's not." He's like, "You should play the deck that I stole from you." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Turn one Trish." That is what I played at US Nationals. I was like, "That deck looks nothing like the deck that I played." And he was like, "Yeah, but it's the same idea." He's like, your deck is good, it'll get you there, but you need to reduce that variability, go with the smaller deck, go speed. And once it was confirmed that I snuck into day two, uh I kind of came to the conclusion that he was right. I knew everyone was going to be playing Ledos. I knew that I needed, especially playing against Michael in round one, to have something that had the chance of just really like blitzkrieging. And I decided that Chris was right. And what I did was I took the US Nationals deck that he had created, which was allegedly based on my own thing that was less refined, and made exactly one card of a change to it and rolled with that.
Yeah, so you're giving up the 5 space Voyager, meaning you absolutely, yeah, you have to do a planet.
Yep.
Let me see here. Yeah, the you've got a lot of the good Voyager stuff that I would expect.
Hmm.
My unpaid intern team has pointed out that you have a lot of these personnel, what I nickname drawback, where there's just a built-in drawback to getting them in played,
Yep.
like Kess, Larson. You don't have Soren, but you have Seska and Rollins. Were they as much of a problem as they could have been?
They weren't a problem whatsoever. That said, the deck did not behave the way it was supposed to in my game against Michael. It's funny that morning of day two, Jared and Chris and I were just kind of talking about my strategy. They did a great job of helping me out, and they said, "Okay, well, what are you gonna do if you don't like get a good opening hand? What if you don't get the christening or the Voyager?" And um, Jared said that, and Chris said, "Well, that's not going to happen in a 35 card deck. You got 6 cards that just get you a ship, right? It's either the ship or get you a ship." Well, what happened? I got 6 personnel, maybe 7 personnel in my opening hand, right? So worst case scenario happened. So what I had to do was I had to pitch my entire hand uh turn one in order to get finding our way out and then get Voyager out, which was not ideal. There's not the amount of event support in this deck to kind of bridge a turn like that. So while it went fast, I was attempting turn two or three. I did get the Trish that allowed me to catch up. I had half my deck in my discard pile. And what I was doing, Ross, was I was rolling with whatever people I had out and could get out. Because it gets even worse. The people that I could get out were the ones that could, if you scroll up to the missions,
Sorry.
scroll down a little bit more.
Yeah.
I had a lot of engineering, a lot of geology.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, that's
I had to go do the Alpha Quadrant mission. Well, what can't you do with Voyager in the Alpha Quadrant? You can't report people to Voyager in the Alpha Quadrant. So then I was starting to get cards in hand, but I couldn't play them because I had to do the mission in the Alpha Quadrant, and then I ended up having to pitch them also into the discard pile because I had too many cards in hand, couldn't report personnel in my ship because I had to go out and do the Alpha Quadrant mission. Very unideal scenario. Uh,
Right.
that said, the deck still worked. It did it what it was supposed to. It's got good skill density. My dilemma pile was doing what it was supposed to against Michael, right? The Chula pile just stops people, right?
Yeah.
Slows them down. I had in development in there because I know Michael likes weenies. The one card that I added to Chris's build was New Face because I thought there was a pretty good chance that he was going to run Federation, high integrity, had moral choice in there. So I was able to slow Michael down. That let me get the one mission. I could get back to the Delta Quadrant, start reporting people, start arranging my own teams the way they needed to. I got a second mission. His was a two mission win deck. So time starts running out on me, right? I got to do something. But by then I was running real low on people. I decked out and I was at that point getting concerned. I think my third mission that I was going to do was maybe going to be the one with I think I had to do Letos next, but I only had one exobiology left on the table, nothing in my deck, and I was getting worried that hey, if I go out and do this in a way that's like too understaffed, because I had like one stop team and one unstopped team, um, the one person I need could die. Maybe I can top deck something that stops Michael. That didn't ended up happening and ended up with 100 to 75 loss even after that god awful disaster of an opening hand and first mission sequence. So the deck did what it was supposed to. It just I had awful variability in that one game and in a um single elimination bracket. It is what it is.
Yeah. Do you remember if he went first or second in the game?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I
Because
think I
if,
went second, but I'm not positive. Oh yeah, no, you're right. I see what you're getting at. Yes, I did have to sacrifice the Letos counters.
yeah. And also if you're going, because you're in essence having to give up your first turn. So not only did you give up those counters, he had two turns in a row.
Yeah.
And I've looked at his deck. It's common deck with the lettuce counters um on top of that.
Yep.
So just think of gas, think of a fire raging and just pouring gas on that fire.
Oh yeah, 100%. I was working at a really steep disadvantage in that game, given what happened, and I felt pretty good to tell you the truth that it was only 100 to 75 loss because as soon as I saw that opening hand, I actually I said to Michael, I was like, I am actually thinking about just conceding.
Yeah,
I stuck with it because like, you're at Worlds, you have to. But it was that awful.
I remember I was drawing dilemmas for a planet attempt. Of the seven cards that I drew, six of them were for the raw other card type.
Mhm.
The one that I could play was one that is better when you have other dilemmas. So I'm like, just take it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not something that it's not a thought that wants to enter your brain, but
yeah,
like at that point in time, at that moment, it was a realistic option. Like, what can I do with this? I decided to see what I could do with this,
yeah,
and it ended up being way more competitive than I expected given the circumstances.
yeah. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think both builds did what I wanted them to. They're fun decks to play. I know that out there in the community there's uh uh, uh thoughts and opinions about the strength of Voyager as a faction as a whole, and they're warranted. But I think that in this environment, in the world's level environment, I didn't feel that it was broken. I didn't feel that it was something that was overpowered. It had a fairly consistent like bell curve of results. It was where I wanted it to be, where I expected it to be, and I'm really happy with how things turned out.
Cool. All right, so for those watching, the decks are listed down below in the video description. Thank you everyone for listening, and also Adam, thank you for taking the time
Yeah, for
to
sure.
come here and talk about your decks.
Thanks for having me on, Ross. I appreciate it.
All right.